Hi, I'm Dave Wurzel, and you're watching PHTV4 Spotlight. And today on Spotlight, we're taking a look at bringing people together through the performing arts, specifically at Moraine Valley Community College. Very fortunate to have a couple of guests from Moraine Valley. On my left, we have Tiana Conway, who's the Managing Director of the Fine and Performing Arts Center at Moraine Valley. Tiana, thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me.
And we also have on my right Dr. Craig Rosen, who is the Academic Theater Program Coordinator and Professor of Theater in Moraine Valley.
And thank you for having me too.
Well, thank you. I'm glad you're both here. I'm looking forward to, when we talked about the topic in advance, the things we'd be exploring, I'm really kind of excited to take a look at that. I love theater to begin with, but in this case, we're going to look at like a start to finish through the experience, bringing it to the site, the creation of it, how it's chosen, the actors, and then the actual production performance. Before we do that, could we talk about your backgrounds in theater and specifically at Moraine Valley as well in your position? Tiana?
Yeah, so I actually came to Moraine Valley about a year and a half ago now. Formerly, I was at Carthage College as the Director of Events and Audience Engagement. I've been in the industry. In April, it'll be 20 years. I got my start at the University of Wisconsin-Platteville, where I also did my undergrad in music performance and my master's in arts management.
So you were on the stage?
Yeah, I was a saxophone player. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
All right. Not in acting.
I did do acting within the theater department and in the community.
All right. It's not in the script. I'm going to ask you, are you ready? Favorite role you ever played? What was it?
Oh goodness. I did play Ula in Producers. That was a lot of fun.
Okay. All right, good. You're ready in case I hit you with the same question?
Okay, I know.
All right. How about your background in Moraine Valley?
I'm finishing my 22nd year at Moraine Valley, so I've been there for quite a while. I got started like most theater kids. I was in the school play in elementary school and kind of got hit by the bug. And so I ended up getting my degrees, all of my degrees in theater from various schools. And before I came to Moraine Valley, I taught at University of Colorado in Boulder, a couple of community colleges, both in Colorado, where I got my PhD, and Minnesota, and then I directed a lot, especially throughout Colorado and Minneapolis before I came here.
Wow. I mean, between the two of you, what a great, combination of experiences you're bringing to this. Your question is going to have to be a little different because you opened the door to it, all right? When you talked about, when you were in grade school, the bug bit you. And I immediately started thinking, yeah, when I was in grade school, I think I played Injun Joe and Tom Sawyer.
Right.
What was the bug? Do you remember what you were doing or what role you had?
Yeah, it was my 6th grade school play. We did South Pacific, and I was Luther
That's a
Billis.
play for 6th grade.
In 4th grade, we did Fiddler on the Roof. So, so it was a really big deal there. But I ended up going to the Philadelphia High School for Creative and Performing Arts, kind of like FAME, and I ended up becoming more of a director than an actor as I got older.
Well, it sounds like Moraine Valley and the community is very fortunate to have you both here. So thank you. I'm glad you landed where you landed. All right, let's take a look specifically at what's going on at Moraine Valley now, okay? And Tiana, I'd like to start with you first. I love theater. I'm looking forward to going to some shows this spring and this summer, but I'm looking at the performance, right? You're at the front end of this. Mm-hmm. You're, choosing the things that are going to be performed, and you're working with the cast or who's going to be in it, whether they're professional or students. Can you talk about all of that? Because Moraine Valley also does professional shows, but you also do academic shows,
Correct.
Right? So it kind of lobbed a big one at you there. Right? Can you kind of talk about those different parts in that process at Moraine Valley?
Yeah, so this is great timing because I just got back from a conference in New York City. I will attend it annually where I see showcases of professional artists, and then they have exhibit halls where I talk with artists or agents on seeing what routes are going to be in the Chicagoland area and negotiating artist fees and what the show will be. The selection process is just seeing the quality of the artist and seeing if it's a show that I feel our community would benefit from or would enjoy. So that's kind of the beginning process of booking a professional artist.
I'm assuming there's a timeliness quality to that too, right? I mean, there's certain things like whether this is the buzz around this thing or something new coming out, does that impact that decision as well?
Yeah, I usually start planning the next season in September, really. So past September, I was planning 24-25. I contact the faculty first, and I get their dates for when they would like to have academic events like music or theater, and then that's when I start plugging in when our artists will be able to route. So it usually starts about, we're starting our season and marketing to the audience for that season, but we're also planning the next year at the same time.
And what about choosing the actual performers themselves, whether they're students or professionals? Where in that process does that fall in?
So selecting the artists, again, it's seeing their shows and seeing if I feel that it will not only, do they have some workshops and outreach for our students as well? But it's also seeing something that I think the audience would benefit from or would enjoy seeing.
Okay. And I guess, and maybe this is a bad question, I'm thinking about the professional versus student, like the concept of auditioning or recruiting performers, right? That rolls into this?
That would be more where Craig will do auditions
okay.
and stuff, so I'll have Craig kind of.
Thank you. Nice transition, because the next question was headed to you. Because I did want you to talk specifically to this, but also academic theater is a slightly different, or maybe not slightly, more than slightly different experience. And the decisions in that process.
Sure. Well, around this time of year, we're starting to cement the shows we're going to do next year. So at this point, I've got 2 or 3 in mind. We have a sort of, formula is not quite the right word, but we usually do a musical in the fall. In the summer, we perform Shakespeare outside, and then in the spring, we do 2 straight plays or non-musicals. And so one is usually, I call it an anthology type play. Something that you might study in books or something that'll be around, and one they just call the Craig play because it's usually something weird and fun, or at least something that interests me.
It's a nice legacy to have,
right?
That
is, it really is. So we do that. Then I cast. We have auditions. The Summer Shakespeare is open to everyone. That becomes community theater, but the other 3 are mainly student acted. So we choose the shows depending on what the student body is at any given time. If we think students will like it, I'll ask students, I'll ask colleagues, I'll ask community members, is there anything that appeals to you, or I'll give them some options, and then we go from there.
Okay. Now you reminded me of, so I want to, Tiana, turn to you but I think you're both going to want to speak to this. We're getting closer to what I hope the conversation really focuses on, is the experience of the audience and how you hope they react to it. But part of the process, you are an educational institution, right? I mean, and that's got to be part of the decision making involved here. So, can you give an example or talk about how that's influenced some of the decisions you've made in a specific case?
Go ahead.
You can.
Okay. For the performing arts, so one of the, like I mentioned, one of the things that I take a look at artists is what do you do in an outreach workshop educational component. Now, not every artist that comes through, professional artists, will do that within our students, but we just had Second City as well, and they did 2 improv workshops for our students, but also we bring in a local high school to come in within that workshop. So that's kind of the first component that I look at. We also had Gina Chavez in the fall, and she did 2 workshops, one with LGBTQIA plus and religion, and the other one was in music, like being a music performer and what that means as a traveling artist. So that's kind of how I work around for the educational experience, but the FPAC is also part of the community as well, which is a really great space, not just for our students, but also for our community to be able to step into and feel part of as a second home for them.
As I say, in that regard, it's got to be a little bit tricky because you do want it to be not an isolated or purely, a student body experience, right? Yeah. For the public as well. Dr. Rosen, you want to speak to that?
Yeah, I mean, I really have to balance, we all do, the community and the college part of it. So in our shows, we usually balance at least 1 or 2 that we think the community will enjoy, that it's about them coming in. The musical usually is one of those. But we also know that our students need to get experience with different genres, different periods, different styles of play, because some of them are going to go on to 4-year school, some want to become professionals in the field. So, so we kind of balance those and make sure that it's not all focused commercially. Some years are a little bit more, some are a little bit less, but also something that our student actors and our student body in general are going to get something out of, something that feels relevant to them, and hopefully the community finds it relevant to them too.
Yeah, I was just saying there's a lot of pieces that you're trying to bring together to make it work for as large a group in as many different ways as you can.
Yeah.
Right? So maybe related to, I think, Tiana, if you've spoken to this, I'd like you to come back to it if you can, and certainly Dr. Rosen, the idea that, you know, how do you stay up on this? And, you know, it sounds like you go to conferences in the summer. I'm imagining you attend theater, you see things, or you find performances, and you're like, that's something we need to take a look at, or that's somebody we should contact. You mentioned a couple. Do you have others like that you want to give us about your backgrounds from where you draw from, and Dr. Rosen also?
Yeah, I mean, I stay kind of current attending conferences or listening to podcasts and seminars, seeing what's out there, and then what other collaborations I can work on. So, for example, I'm working with the Moraine Valley Foundation on how can we, because in my background in arts education, I was actually taking performers into schools that are underdeveloped and don't have access and resources for the performing arts in this way. So we're going to work together during the Gateways Gala that happens this April to raise funds so I can take 2 artists into schools in the local community. So that we're launching that as a new thing, but that's a great example of that we don't always just put on a show on stage and then that's it, move on to the next show. We're always trying to find other ways that we can connect with our schools, our community, and our current students.
I said, what a great opportunity,
Yeah.
you know, for people who don't have either the ability, the access, or not as accessible, right?
Yeah.
Dr. Rosen?
Yeah.
No, I'd like you to speak to that, and I'm assuming you do this too, and I'll even reel it back in a little bit. I'm thinking like attending performances of things, going to theater festivals, or, you know.
Every year I take my students to the Kennedy Center American College Theater Festival. So that's our big kind of commitment, and it's a 6-state region, or 5-state, Wisconsin, Illinois, Indiana, Ohio, Illinois, I guess. And we get to see work from other colleges. Our students attend workshops. I attend workshops, and I have professional development meeting with other faculty. At that point, I also get to see other work from other schools, other college shows to get ideas for what we're going to do. Fortunately, we're in Chicago, or the Chicagoland, so I get to go into the city and see show after show after show if I want, depending on the week. Pre-COVID, I was once on the Jeff Awards Committee, so I would see 100 shows a year. Now I've got a 5-year-old daughter, so
That
now
changed
it's
things.
yeah. Now between that and COVID, it's really
Well, you're
kind
seeing
of pulled
different
the bag.
theater now.
Well,
You're
yeah,
seeing different theater with her now.
yes, she's loving children's theater. Actually, she's loving any musical at this point. So I try to stay abreast of it that way. If I was in the middle of America, not near such a great theater market, it would be a little tougher. But you know, there's so many shows that we've done at school I had never heard of. I saw in the city, and I was like, what a great show for the school.
Yeah, you know, and as you say that, I'm thinking using Chicago as a source, I guess, or this region. Does Chicago still have the reputation as being a very good starting point for theater, or for people starting in theater, or theater in general?
I mean, I think Chicago, from my experience, is sort of a melting pot of theater people. If you go around there, a lot of people that have come here from the Midwest, from Texas. Other than New York, I think Chicago is probably the biggest, most impressive theater market in the country. I'm sure in LA they could argue with that. But Chicago still is anything from improv, as Tiana was nice enough to bring in Second City and have them work with us, to New Works, to places like Steppenwolf and the Goodman. So Chicago really still is.
It is a good place.
Yeah.
All right, so I think you both have, you know, great transition into the, what I'd like us to focus on then is the issue of how theater is a shared experience for an audience, right? Including, you know, the cast as well, and you know, the crew and the production staff. You know, think about theater like Chicago Shakespeare, where, you know, any live theater, I think there's a feed on the audience, right? But it's, you know, so you have this kind of shared experience. Can you talk about how that shared experience, you know, creating that kind of opportunity, a diverse audience, a diverse cast, different types of productions, and how, you know, how much is that part of that decision to whatever the show is, where the performance is, and how you're trying to create that element in the performance.
Yeah, I'll have you go first on
I
that
keep
one.
letting you. What? Oh,
Oh, I can go. Yeah.
yeah.
So when I pieced together this series for the Performing Arts series, I try to always include, like world music of some sort. Right now we have the Japanese drumming musical coming in, Drum Tao, this upcoming March. It's their North American national tour, and it's something that doesn't go out every single year. So it's bringing different. A lot of times you'll see tribute shows, especially with if we have a specific crowd age on our stage, but I try to go beyond that to give them more of experience. And sometimes they might not know an artist that's going to be on the stage, but give it a shot because the quality is going to be absolutely there, but the opportunity for them to come together. So for the 30th anniversary, the goal was to bring all generations together into the hall, except for Second City, that does have adult content. But it was that everyone can have that shared experience together and get something out of each show, including when I was working with the faculty on putting their shows together for the season as well. We wanted to make sure that all different type of generations can be together.
It's interesting to talk about diversity and age, and that's got to be a tremendous challenge, finding something that speaks to a younger audience versus a octogenarian audience, but and everybody in between. That's a challenge, and then all the other potential diversities. I mean, that's part of your selection process as well, whether it's cultural or ethnic or racial. I mean, we're gonna get a broad spectrum of types of performances to see, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And for the series, I always say it's going to be similar to what you're going to see in Chicago. We're just the southwest suburbs of it. So what makes it easier is that we do have free parking. The accessibility is a lot easier. And it's a little bit smaller of a venue, about 575 seats. So it just makes it a more intimate evening. But talking about age, yeah, I'll let Dr. Rosen talk. I mean, we had Percy Jackson musical, which did extremely well for us. And yeah, I'll let you kind of speak on that.
I mean, with that show specifically, I mean, we had high school, junior high school people come in. It was like Rocky Horror. People came in costumes, and I wasn't familiar with Percy Jackson at the time, and now it's so in the zeitgeist with the TV show. But what we found is that audience will just go with it, like a senior audience. By now, they know that some of our shows are going to specifically appeal to them. This is for the academic shows. Others might be more youthful in content. But I think at this point, we sort of have a reputation, and enough people come and they say, I'll give it a shot. And you know what? If it's not the show for me, well, 2 hours of my life went by, but I learned something new.
I think that's it's interesting, and you mentioned like going into the city. I do. I'm somebody who likes going to theater in Chicago. I like attending live performances, but to be able to have it here is so much easier, so much more accessible, especially some of the level of talent and types of shows that you're talking about. Specifically about the thing, maybe this is a part of the decision process. I'd like to speak a little bit, you mentioned like the Percy Jackson thing, the diversity of cast in that, as I think about it, I'm thinking about, like Goodman Theater's A Christmas Carol.
Right.
I think they do a very nice job of trying to demonstrate some diversity in cast. And I've seen it in other performances. I think Chicago Shakespeare recently had a couple of plays where they stepped outside the traditional box quite a bit. Can you speak to that with Percy Jackson?
Yeah, Percy Jackson had a cast of almost 20 students, and they ranged in age from 18 years old to 56 years old. Race was the spectrum. Up there, we had students and actors with various kinds of disabilities. It became sort of a melting pot of a play. It's a large play. You can cast in various ways. You can cast cross-gender if you want. So for that show, it really became kind of a special place that we all sort of looked around and said, boy, this is... My wife calls theater a family of misfits, and we kind of all looked around and we were
other than her husband.
Well, other than her husband, well, it depends on the day.
She knows, right?
Yeah, it depends on the day of the week. But we looked around, and it was something that when we began casting the show, it wasn't a consideration one way or the other. We just wanted the best people for the roles. And then that show, you can also have an ensemble, like a chorus. And we said, boy, this is fun. Let's just keep building it. And by the time we were done, it was really a special diverse cast.
Yeah, it is nice when that diversity kind of lends itself naturally to the thing, like it happens, you know, it can work like that. Have you ever found, kind of related, not, I'm going off script here again, but where doing something like that changes the, because this is going to be related to the next question, how the audience reacts to the experience, right? Or what the experience itself is like. Does it change the dynamic of how the show is maybe presented, but also how it's received?
Oh, absolutely. You know, everything, and I'm speaking for my part, but I think you'll agree with most of it, you know, everything on that stage is up for analysis, right? Everything is a choice. So there are many shows, let's say, when it comes to race, that we just choose the best actor. But we did a show years ago. It was Neil Simon's Barefoot in the Park, so a really well-known show. And everything was in black and white. We did it like it was a Dick Van Dyke TV show. And the woman who played the lead was African American. She was the only black actor in the show. And then when my students talked about, and we just chose her as the best actor. But my students, when we talked about the show, thought that it was part of the black and white aesthetic of the show, of the scenery, and they took it in a way that I never took it, because that wasn't part of
Right, she's an actress on the stage.
Right,
it's
but for them and for anyone seeing a show, everything up there is a choice, and it's something that's thought through one way or the other, and it's fair to figure it out. So that was one that always stick in my mind. Boy, I hadn't thought of that.
Yeah.
So,
but you're right. It's interesting. I think a lot of performances like that sometimes, and that there are ideas out there, depending on who presents it or how they present it, the interpretation it lends itself to. Right. Mm-hmm. Can you talk to that a little bit? Some of the performances that you've pulled into the theater.
I would agree with what Craig said, and you know, what the great thing is about the arts is that it moves everyone in a different way, and they take something a little bit different from each show that I probably would not have seen it the way they did, which is wonderful. So sometimes it might not, someone might not like the show, but it was a great experience because they didn't think to come to something such as that. But yeah, it's like what Craig said. I agree that it's wonderful to hear different ways people have experienced a performance, and not just, and it's usually a more of a positive interaction.
Occasionally, we haven't done it for a couple of years, we'll have a talk back session after a performance where the actors and some of the crew will stay on the stage, the audience can stay behind and ask questions, and their questions they're fascinating. They just ask things, and they each learn from each other. And someone says, "I hadn't thought about that," and then the audience gets into a dialogue about what they got from it, because that is what the arts are about. It's the performing arts. It's a communal. It's a communal experience.
I was to say that conversation is. I'm imagining as a producer or as a director or somebody who's bringing that event to the venue. That's got to be kind of a powerful experience to watch. It's almost like going to an art museum and watching somebody, talk about your artwork and how they're reacting or how it makes them feel, or
And we usually do it with issue-oriented plays, and that we might worry or be concerned that the audience are going to be taken aback. Shows that have sexual content. We've done shows that deal with incest and rape. We become concerned, and then people share their stories afterwards, and some of the things that they share are just, they're cathartic, and we end up so happy we did that work, and they're so grateful we did that work.
Yeah.
So,
I was going to say, if it's got to be a tremendously powerful therapeutic experience if they're ready to experience it or see it in that way, right? Yeah. Tiana, you talked about this a little bit. I kind of wanted to come back to a little bit about bringing like theater or performance into the community, or off the stage at Marine Valley into the community. Can you speak to that just a little bit? Why is that such an important thing?
So we haven't really done that at Moraine, but I've done it at other roles at performing arts centers, and I find it's really important because it's not to recruit people to come to our college. It's to give them exposure to the arts that they would not have had the resources to be able to do. And so taking a guest artist into elementary school, middle school, high school, and they usually do a workshop or a master class or an outreach that's less than an hour. So it gives them that opportunity to see actual live arts. A lot of stuff right now is all on our iPads and on our TVs. So it gives them that opportunity and exposure. And then the artists also gets to do a Q&A, learn a little bit about them and understand where they've come from.
I could see where an experience like that could be tremendously inspirational for somebody, right? The thing itself, to have that experience, to watch the performance, to see the performance, and then how it might inspire you or you know, get you to think about things you might not normally. And maybe related, I do want to make sure we take an opportunity to talk about Moraine Valley's theater programs specifically, students that have gone through it. Number one, who can take, you know, who can
Sure.
take some of these things? And then if you can talk about who's gone beyond. I mean, do you have some of those too? And I'm sure you do.
Yeah, I mean, we have next student now, who's performing at the Marriott in Lincolnshire. He's in the Heights, and previously he was in Beautiful, the Carole King musical. He did a lot of cruise ship work. We've got students that have gone on to do tech work on Broadway and Broadway tours behind the stage. So they, you know, they pop up. Oftentimes they'll go from us to a four-year school first, but not always. Yasir, who's the one I was talking about up at the Marriott right now, he went from us and started auditioning, and he was a talented, charismatic guy, and one thing led to another. So we're really proud of him. Another student has a small theater company in Chicago now, and that theater company, I was nominated for Jeff Awards, and I don't know, his name is Stefan, but I can't remember the name of the theater company at this moment. Oh, the Imposters, to give him a plug. The Imposters Theater Company. So they get around, and it's exciting when we hear that.
Yeah, I would think that's got to be incredibly rewarding, almost like your own children, right?
Oh,
Proud
yeah.
of them that they're out in the world and they're, you know, doing amazing things like this. You know, I've got one last question I'd like to kind of, maybe it brings it all together, and we've kind of been talking around this a little bit already, I think, and that is when people see the shows that you've brought in, or the performances, or the plays that you've seen, and they've watched your presentation, your interpretation, what do you hope the audience gets out of their experience, or what do you hope they walk away with thinking about or talking about after that? Who would like to handle that one?
Would you like me to?
Sure, you can go first.
We've gone the whole time, and it's the first time. You know, each show is so different. You want them first and foremost to be entertained, whatever that means. In Percy Jackson the musical, the entertainment factor is quite different than some of our serious shows. But to be entertained, to feel like that was time well spent. And then sometimes you just want them to go out with a smile, and other times you want them to discuss the topics that were in the show. But that would probably be first and foremost, and just enjoy the theater experience. So much about what we do on our side, and your side too, is just about getting people there to understand how exciting theater can be. So hopefully walking out, and even if they say, that wasn't the show for me, really respecting and appreciating everything that they saw up there.
Right. Even if I didn't personally like it, I can recognize that something special was going on.
I
or
think
something.
so.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's incredibly important right now. I mean, when the pandemic happened, we were the first to close and the last to come back, and not all venues are making it. Moraine, we're very strong, and we have a very strong community, which I'm incredibly grateful for. But, you know, after a series, once the performance is done, I stand in the upper lobby and just thank those going by. But I love when they come out smiling. They got a lot out of it. And then sometimes I'll receive, you know, feedback and emails of, this was incredible. I never thought of I would have gone to this. I'm so glad I did. We can't wait to see the next show. And it's wonderful to hear that they're enjoying their experience and continue to return to our venue and trust what we do for our community.
I would say tremendous compliment to both of you, especially that you can generate that type of experience and that response, and you know, get that feedback specifically, or see it as they step into their next, you know, career. You know, both, thank you very much. Excellent insights into this topic. I wish you all the best at Moraine Valley. It sounds like you're doing amazing things.
Well, we hope to see you in our theater.
I hope
There
so.
you go.
No, now you have. I don't know how I
I'll put
could
the
not.
pressure on.
No, that's not correct. I don't know how I could not, though, after some of the things you've talked about. So thank
great.
you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
I'm Dave Wurzel, and you've been watching PHTV4 Spotlight. Today's Spotlight has been about bringing people together, in this case specifically through the performing arts at Moraine Valley. Thank you for watching.